The WWF, what the world is watching. Turn it on and rip the knob off.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Wrestling Memory Grenade. Now at episode 195. I am Ray Russell, and this week we're going to take a week off from the WWF 1989 project. This is a very special edition of the Grenade because this week we have a very special guest going to talk about a very different topic than what we've been covering here right now. The Hulkamania, the Hogan era ends in the WWF once upon a time in the 1990s, but it picks up where it left off over in WCW land. And that's what we're going to be talking about here this week. As my guest, I'm proud to announce for the very first time here on the Grenade in the WrestleCopia world, he is the one and only 1/3 of the unprofessional wrestling podcast known as Booking the Territory. He is the one, the only, he is Mean Mike Mills. Welcome to the world of WrestleCopia. Mike, great to have you here, man.
Hey, Ray, I appreciate the invite. I know, I was telling you this before we started recording. I said, man, it's been a long time ago. You reached out to me about coming on the show at some point. And I remember just thinking at the time I couldn't do it. I couldn't commit to a day and time. And I'm not one who likes to, whenever I'm going to be on a show, I'm like, I hate telling someone, I think I can do it this day. I think I do it that day. And, I 2 kids in high school at the time. And I was like, I just was really tied up. And, my schedule has been a little bit more open the last couple of weeks. And I was like, man, let me finally reach out to Ray and tell him we can finally do this. Because I feel like I would have to look in my DMs, but I feel like it was a year at least, maybe a year and a half ago. I didn't have 2 kids in high school then, but I had a lot going on, whatever it was. It feels like it was a good year and a half ago when you first asked me, and I just couldn't do it, and I wasn't sure at the time, and I was like, finally said, let me reach back out to him because I hate telling somebody I will do something and never do it. So here we are.
Better late than never. So unprofessional at podcasting, but a man of his word is Mike Mills, and that's okay with me. We appreciate you joining the show, Mike. All the listeners out here, the Grenade, I'm sure they already know a little bit about Booking the Territory, but for those few under a rock somewhere, why don't you tell them a little bit about what you guys got going over there right now?
First, we are about to hit year 11 of podcasting. We started in the first show, this always gets confusing. The first show was recorded like at the end of May of 2015. Mm-hmm. And I got to always go back and look. We released it like the first week of June 2015. So around the end of May, early June is like the anniversary. So wow. We are coming up on year 11. I'm not sure when you're going to drop this as I say that, but we're coming up on year 11. It's been a lot of fun. We started off, believe it or not, talking about modern wrestling. That lasted maybe a year. And then we started maybe a little bit more than a year, maybe 18 months or so. Then we started talking about WCW Saturday night on TBS and Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Right. And that was just the genesis of, okay, you know what? It's a lot more fun to talk about the old stuff than the modern stuff. No offense to anyone who's into modern stuff. As I say on Booking the Territory all the time, whatever makes you happy and whatever floats your boat, enjoy watching it. It's not my eyes and my brain that got to do it. So, hey, enjoy it, man. I'm not here to tell you, AEW sucks and WWE needs to do this. It is what it is. If you like AEW and you like WWE, if you like both, hey, man, some people like chocolate ice cream. Some people like vanilla. Some people like chocolate chip cookies. Some people like white chocolate macadamia nut. Whatever floats your boat. You do what makes you happy. So I always say that, but it's so much fun to talk about the old stuff because like we always do on Booking the Territory, the old stuff, a lot of people romanticize about how great it was. But when you really go back and dig into it, minus a few years here and there, there's a lot of bad stuff in the old stuff too. So I always say, like, we like to paint things with rose-colored glasses, and it was all perfect. And the saying we always say on the show, everything was airtight, brother. I mean, everything wasn't always airtight. Sometimes there was some stupid stuff that you saw and you were like, what the hell were they thinking? Yeah. But we enjoy covering it. We have covered every episode of WCW NWA Saturday Night, dating back to October of 1985 through where we are now, as we've entered and are well into the Hogan era in 94 of Saturday Night. And then we did the entire run. It's on, if you just go to tinyurl.com/bttpod or search Booking the Territory wherever you get your podcast from. We did every single episode of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. We interviewed Jim Cornette 2 or 3 different times, I think 2, about things in the promotion. He actually had me on his show at one point where I talked about, I asked him questions about Smokey. So lots of classic wrestling discussed in the last decade on Booking the Territory, all available on our free feed. We drop every single Thursday night, 7 p.m. Central Time. So, Ray, thank you for allowing me that plug at the very beginning, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, brother. That's what this is all about, man. I appreciate you, doing the show, and we're going to have a fun conversation ahead because I know we're kind of in the same boat on Hulk Hogan, and he's going to be a very big topic this week on the program, as you guys, like you said, are smack dab in the summer of 1994, which is the arrival of Hulk Hogan to WCW. And I'm not going to jump ahead all the way to there just yet in the conversation, though, Mike. This is kind of fun for me, too, because it's timely for me because the last 3 summers, my teenage son, he made it a point to he had never really watched WCW. He'd grown up watching some of my dad's old WWF stuff and other things, but so he started making a point when the network was up, when the Peacock was up, whatever it was, he started watching Mid-Atlantic from the fall of 81 or whatever they had. And when Crockett took over TBS, he started watching the 605 show instead. And he's been watching that, binging that and the pay-per-views and the clashes and whatever in between, all the way up to Spring Stampede 1994 is where he went back to school. And he just puts the controller down and he waits till next summer to pick it back up. And so he looked at me the first week, March of 1994, Hogan arrives, or he's on the beach, on the set, whatever they're doing there. And he looks at me like, I didn't know he came this early. And I look back at him, and because I had not watched this era, I'm like, there's so much that we can go back and watch. This is not necessarily the era I choose, but there was, like you said, some good stuff in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing that you miss out with. God, this is the thing I hate about Hogan coming into WCW in 94, because even prior to, and I'm not talking about immediately right before, but you had a lot of good stuff. I mean, Rick Rude is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Sting and Vader's matches dating back even years before that, phenomenal. Like I say on Booking the Territory all the time, I don't want this to sound like I'm hyperbole, but when I think of like hard hitting, just ridiculous matches, I think of sometimes Sting and Vader, because they had some wars, and you go back and watch the crowd reactions to that stuff. It's phenomenal. And then Rick Rude is great during that era prior to his, injury. There's just so much, like, they're not doing everything right because, the numbers are down and they are struggling to be frank. But, the pay-per-views, they're not doing great numbers. But there also is a lot of like we've listed it before on the show, how much talent they had. There's a point in time, when you had the Dangerous Alliance, obviously that's a couple years before Hogan gets there, but you have so much like talent. And if you just start naming people, the Rick Rudes, the Steamboats, Arn Anderson, like Bobby Eaton, Sting,
Austin.
Vader, Steve Austin. Yeah. How can I forget about him? Brian Pillman. You start listing the talent that this organization has before Hogan arrives and after. Mm-hmm. And you can really ask yourself a serious question, go, how the hell were they not printing money? Like what was going on that they're not able to make money? And there's a lot of turmoil in there. It's a loaded question. I mean, you had a lot of changes in management. You get Bill Watts. There's a lot of different things that contribute to the problems that they had. So you can't like pin it on a talent, but you can't pin it on one part of management. There's just a whole lot of stuff that transpires that it's like a jigsaw puzzle that somebody if you put it together, it's a masterpiece. But if you throw it in the air, it's like, what the hell's all this crap on the floor? It's just like dirt. That's kind of like what they had. They had a nice bit of talent there, a great bit of talent, like good talent. I didn't even name Ric Flair, obviously, but like they couldn't get it together. Like,
Right.
so it leads to eventually more changes, and then we get to the Hogan era. But even before Hogan, you got a lot of talent there that you can do a lot of things with, and they had some good feuds prior to, but it just doesn't have. Even here's another match I just thought of, it just popped in my head. This is before Hogan. Bunkhouse Buck and Dustin from Chicago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Lord, those two. That was their first match. That's what's crazy. They beat the crap out of each other. Yeah. And you watch that hard hitting match, like we covered it on the Patreon feed. It's like, damn, man, they had so much good stuff going. That was just one match in that pay-per-view. Like, what the hell? And, but that doesn't work for me, brother. Has to come in and ruin a lot of stuff too.
Absolutely not, brother. I reminisce, I was 14 years old during this era of 94, and being awoken, watching these pay-per-views that I was, I was very lucky to get to watch a lot of these at my cousin's house. So I saw pretty much everything live if I didn't get it at my own house during this time period. So I got to see those Nasty Boys, Cactus Jack, Max Payne, and Cactus Jack, Kevin Sullivan. You want to talk about hard-hitting style matches. And, man, I hadn't realized till we went back and just saw the infancy of Bunkhouse Buck there. Jimmy Golden, when he first comes in, they let him talk. And I haven't watched 94 TV in a very long time. Like I said, there's so much to choose from. That's not my go-to. So I was like, what was old is new again to me. I was sitting there, my son's watching this, and he's like, oh, he keeps deferring to me, like looking at me like I'm going to explain something. And it's like, I don't remember, man. Like I probably haven't seen this since 94. And so, but there's so many cool things that they do. And yeah, when he comes in, he's a snug boy, is Jimmy Golden in there. And they have some good matches early on with Dustin and Bunkhouse Buck. And they do have a lot of great pieces. Like you said, Too Cold Scorpio, man, he was great. I still think back to that clash when he debuted and did the 450 for the first time. I've told this story before, but the only time in my life where I stopped the tape recording the show during the commercial break to rewind it to see what the hell just happened off that time. I couldn't process. My mind couldn't process what Scorpio had just done with that 450.
Yeah, back then you couldn't just like rewind the DVR and let's see what the hell just happened. Like you actually had to like stop the tape and go watch it, and then you're putting at risk the next match if you don't do it quick enough.
Gotta do it fast.
But that's crazy. Yeah, I that's another one. I didn't even think of Scorpio, but you're right. He comes in, and we put over Scorpio so much when he first comes in and whatnot. Now the music video is hilarious.
That's awesome.
That is gold. Everybody hiccup to go Scorpio. Like I can't sing, but yeah, it's so good when they're at the playground. But he's in there. He first comes in and he's flying around, and a lot of us, we hadn't seen like stuff like that yet.
No,
like this dude. I remember telling Harper and Doc before. I think it was either on the Clash or maybe one of his first Saturday night matches. I don't remember which one. He jumps and flies so effortlessly.
Yeah,
he looks like he's damn near floating.
He does,
and we know that you can't float on Earth, but he literally looks like he's floating through the air. And that the other part about him that's so impressive, he's not a small dude to be doing that stuff. Like it's not like a little luchador flying around. I mean, he's not huge, but he's got a little size on him.
Yeah, that's why that was the big thing in ECW. That guy with the sign would always refer to Scorpio as pigs can fly, fat ass fly, things like that. And obviously, Scorpio was never that large of a human being, but for what he was doing, it really stuck out because of his size. He was a big dude.
Yeah, he really was. I like I said, I don't get worked up, but I get passionate about it. Like when you go back and watch it, because you're right. If somebody would say, "Hey, won't you go back and watch '94 early on before Hogan gets in?" I'm like, well, if you gave me a choice, I probably wouldn't want to watch that. I mean, like, there's not a million, but there's other things I might want to relive that I've seen a million times. That's not like one of them, but we go chronologically. So it's not like we skip and go back or forward. We just hit the point in 94. So we just keep pushing through it. Right. And yeah, you just see so much. Another name. I didn't even name him. Johnny B. Bad, Steven Regal. Yeah. Like there's like, I mean, it's a damn who's who.
Terry
of
Funk's
like
coming through
talent.
There,
right. Terry Funk comes. Yeah. Like that's after Rude's injury, but it's like, yeah, you get all this talent. And again, it's sad because you're like, they couldn't make that work before Hogan got there. So it's crazy, but it's something to just really reminisce about and watch.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
your son who's going back watching it, I mean, good for him because I can't get mine. He's 21. He has seen some things from this era, and I'll like try to explain. Like whenever I see something in the modern era that they do, I'll say, man, they did that back in like 96. And then I'll start talking about it. He just looks at me with glazed eyes, like, yeah, okay. Like, I mean, I get it. Like to him, 1994 is like
Ancient.
somebody it's like me in 1985, like my mom telling me something that happened in 1954. I'm like, okay, old lady, stop talking now. So it's just one of those things, man. But they had a ton of talent back then, and they had a phenomenal roster. They just couldn't draw money, and they weren't doing good pay-per-view numbers either, which is crazy when I think of some of those pay-per-views.
No, yeah, they were stacked, man. They had a ton of talent, like you said, and they booked well as far as the matches went for the pay-per-views. I mean, even the lower end guys that I didn't necessarily care for, they found a way to make them work. Was never a Paul Roma fan, but for some reason I was on board for Pretty Wonderful. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just Orndorff doing the elbow. But I was, it was a good time in WCW throughout 1994. But Hulk Hogan shows up, and we'll talk about this in a little bit too when he does arrive. Much later, I mean, actually physically shows up in WCW, and it wasn't too long after that we're going to see a trickling out of many of familiar faces from years gone by. So we'll get to that. I don't want to rush this. So I got to ask you, man, because we got to go. This has been several months ago now. Hulk Hogan pops up on TV for WCW. I think it was in March was the first time he popped. Because I know it's before Slamboree, because my son's looking at me like, why the hell is Hulk Hogan here? And so I'm like, because he knows he's coming, but he didn't know he came that early. And I'm like, I guess they're talking to him. I don't really know what the story was. I don't know how much, you guys have discussed the business side of it. I've listened to you guys have fun on there, but I'm just curious, like, did you remember him coming that early when you got to that part?
No, it feels like it comes out of, I don't know, it feels like it kind of happens real quickly because they're on the set of Thunder in Paradise, as my memory recalls.
Yeah.
And they do a couple of those over a couple of weeks. It feels really weird when it happens. And then if you're like, me, I grew up on watching Mid-South and the Southern wrestling. That was my thing. In the NWA and WCW, that was where my bread and butter was when I was younger watching wrestling. So I will say this, and this I need to say this so I can answer the question you're asking about how much I remember from it. I didn't necessarily hate Hulk Hogan in the 80s. I was actually at the first show that when the WWF first came to New Orleans in the Superdome, when they brought JYD back, JYD's first appearance after leaving Mid-South. And the crowd they responded. I didn't hate Hogan at that point. Like, he was a star, and you got to give him credit. He was a big part of the national expansion, and they probably don't do what they do or become what they become without Hulk Hogan.
Right.
So it is what it is, right? Like, you got to give him credit there.
Sure.
It just felt like a misfit, or it didn't fit in the world of WCW. I will always remember not only the first interview, but like the first time you see him on Saturday night, or the first time you see him with the big gold belt. Again, that's months down the line, though. It just was like, something's weird here. It's almost like another dimension, like you're in an alternate reality of sorts, to see this guy on this television show that, for me, I think back to the TBS studio days, and now I'm seeing him on Saturday night. There's just something that just doesn't fit. But it happened, and here we are.
No, yeah, I think that's an excellent analogy too, like an alternate dimension kind of deal, because he just doesn't look right on there. It's so weird to see Hulk Hogan in center stage, or Hulk Hogan holding the big WCW gold title there. And, I think about Ric Flair when he got to the WWF in 1991. I'd followed Ric Flair over in the NWA, and it took a little bit to get used to seeing Ric Flair on the TV screen, but I felt like in many ways he eventually adapted. By the time he got to the Rumble and won the title, it was real to me. Like Ric Flair just felt like he fit into the company. But Hogan, this entire run is just so weird, at least until Nitro, when they're in the bigger arenas and they're doing more campy kind of stuff a little bit there with Hogan having a little more say in regards to the weekly, what he's doing and not doing, brother, there on TNT. But yeah, the early Hogan stuff was so odd to me, and to Mean Gene to go out and interview him multiple times on Thunder in Paradise, the set of Thunder in Paradise. Even back then, you had to, I remember being 14, and just to kind of set the stage for you, Mike, I was never a Hulkamaniac. There was a period when I first started watching the WWF, which would have been the Mr. T, the Rock and Wrestling time frame, that I didn't mind Hogan. He was just he was another guy on the card that that I was watching, so I was fine. At some point, it was too much, stuff down my throat, and he was, starting to screw over some of the guys that I was fans of, and that wasn't cool. Eliminating the Boss Man like a sore loser after the Boss Man had already eliminated him. I didn't go for that, but that didn't work for me, brother. So I learned to loathe Hogan in the WWF eventually. And so when I saw him pop up here, I remember thinking, please don't actually come here. Please, there's no way WCW can get this guy, because he had been always the WWF guy. So unfortunately, it will come to fruition. We know Hulk Hogan's going to be signing here eventually.
Yeah, and so to go back to what you're saying, we have talked about. I wanted to say this because one thing I didn't answer when you originally asked me that question. We have talked about like his initial deal, like coming in and whatnot. And I'll just say this: I've always said this. I've said this on BTT numerous times. He was a necessary evil. As I was saying, they had a lot of talent, but they weren't making money. Their pay-per-views weren't doing. I mean, they weren't the worst, but I can't say they weren't the worst because I'd have to look at WWF numbers. But in terms of buys, they weren't cutting it. I mean, They went like the pay-per-view before Bash at the Beach, the 94, where Hogan wrestles Flair. That one did 225,000 buys. The one before that, Slamboree, did 105. Spring Stampede only did 115. Like, so Super Brawl 4 before that, 110. Like, they're just floating around in this 100 range, and they're just not. And the thing was, like, the pay-per-views weren't horrible. Let's not even talk about Battle Bowl. That year, that was 55,000 buys. Like, that was horrendous. Oh my God, that was terrible. Other than that, the concept of Battle Bowl just didn't work. But like, they just couldn't push the needle. And then they bring in Hogan, and to their credit, they popped. That was the most at that point that they had done on buys. Going back all the way to Great American Bash in '90, where they did 200,000. I'm quoting these from WrestleNomics, by the way. I don't have these memorized. I haven't wrote them down. Bash at the Beach, though, did 225. So, like, they paid him a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they did their best pay-per-view buy number at Bash at the Beach in 94. But Doc did point out when we were covering Bash at the Beach 94, that's great, you did that. And he stole this from me. But he said, okay, so what do you do next? And he was right, because Fall Brawl, the next pay-per-view, only did 115,000. Yeah. So, like, you do have to, like, keep up the momentum. But at the end of the day, he was a necessary evil. They were having trouble marketing. They just couldn't, move the shit. Like, when you got a big old cruise ship, steaming in the Gulf of Mexico, it takes a lot to turn that sucker around. You can't just, it's not like, you got a single engine outboard motor where you can just turn the boat around and you do it inside of 30 seconds. You got a big old cruise ship. It takes a lot to turn it around. So they needed something like him to help move the needle. The problem was, you don't get Hulk Hogan without that doesn't work for me, brother. So, like, you got to make so many concessions to get him. And then those concessions only got worse over the years with him. And it ended up, I'm not going to say he was the reason there's a debate. He's not the reason that WCW died, in my personal opinion. But at the end of the day, like, you can only do so much when you got this guy who's got all this creative control. And eventually it has an expiration date. Everything does in wrestling. I mean, to be fair, like, whether you're talking about something modern now or whatever, like, at some point in time, Roman Reigns, as a top guy, he may be an attraction as he gets older, but eventually it has an expiration date. CM Punk, same thing. Like, and I don't mean them dying. I mean them just aging out in terms of stardom.
No, yeah.
Eventually, Hulk Hogan, in terms of his stardom, it's gonna, you get a little long in the tooth. Cornette's old saying, "How can I miss you if you never go away?" Well, he comes in '94 and he's there till the end. So, at some point you got to do something different, and they never were able to do something different after the success of the NWO and whatnot. So they needed him, but I was never a Hogan guy either. So it was one of those things where I understand why they brought him in, because they needed to make some money. They needed to be able to market the product, and they did. They were able to do that to a point. They were, for 83 weeks, they won the Monday Night War. So something was going good with him and the others.
Right.
It just has an expiration date at some point.
Yeah, and too many cooks in the kitchen too. I mean, that's just another story,
Yes.
another day. As as WCW continues to bring in the talent here, but they start with Hogan in this era anyway. But it's kind of funny because you talked about everything has shelf life. Hogan had a shelf life, I dare say, in the WWF, at least as far as his peak goes, because as time went on there in the early 1990s, after they put the belt back on him in '91, the crowd wasn't necessarily as behind him as they once were. The pops weren't as loud. The crowd wasn't sticking around to watch the posing as much. And there was literal pops when Sid, went after Hogan after the Rumble in '92, to the point where they had to doctor the audio on the following weekend's television and change the chant of Sid, Sid, Sid to boo, as Sid was going after Hogan. So they're trying to tell their narrative that, hey, Hogan's our top guy. He's over more than anyone. And meanwhile, the crowd's still slowly revolting on him. And I got to tell you, when he came back again in '93 and won the belt from Yokozuna at the end of WrestleMania 9, I complained that Yokozuna won the belt, Mike. But 10 seconds later, I was like, now I was longing for Yokozuna to have been the champ. So I should have just been happy with that. So, and then we go off the air with something I didn't expect at all. Hulk Hogan back, with the belt yet again. And that didn't really work too well. And neither did the creative for him, dude. And so he wasn't there very long, but he did do the job on the way out. I don't know what he got paid, but he did the job of Yoko. And this is the next time we see him here on national television, is in WCW on TBS. He's popping up. He's doing a few interviews, and eventually Mean Gene got to get his shit in. Got to call the hotline, and he's promoting. What could Hogan be teaming with Sting? I heard Flair say this about you, Hulkster. What do you got to say? So Mean Gene kind of stirring the pot here to get Hogan around. At least that's just Mean Gene for you. But here he is. It kind of feels like, okay, he's on his way, and of course you guys knew he was on his way. So I got to ask you, how much did Harper love this, that Hulk Hogan arriving here in WCW?
My goodness. So in the last few months since we've been here with Hulk, man, Bobby Heenan at one point, was it doing Bash at the Beach? I think it was doing Bash at the Beach. Bobby Heenan yells, "I've seen this before," on commentary. And Hogan goes, Harper goes, "Yeah, that's the problem." Because like everything that he's doing, just everything that's going on is, yeah, we've seen Hulk do this before. He's hulking up. He's blowing the, what he does when he hulks up. Yeah. It's the whole thing that it's like, wait, we've all seen. That's the problem for people my age and Harper's age and Doc's age. We're all around the same age. That's the problem. Like, we had seen this already before. It was exciting then. Again, even if I'm not a Hulk fan, It was exciting then with him hulking up and, beating Iron Sheik and, beating this one and beating that one and the feuds he had in the mid 80s. But it got long in the tooth, like you just described.
Yeah.
And so we got to Harper's like, I've seen this before. And the biggest problem, I don't want to get ahead because you may get to this in a minute, but the other problem is, in Doc's words, he brings all his stooges with him.
Well, that
and goofs. Now, no disrespect to those fellas, because I was fans of all of them. He doesn't just come. He's got to bring all the other friends of his as well.
Right. No, that is a huge problem. That was my problem. I was 14 years old, no Observer, no internet in 1994. And even I was sitting there going, wait a minute. Jim Duggan, Honky Tonk Man, John Tenta, Kamala. Eventually when Kamala comes, it's pretty obvious, what's happening here. And so There was a lot of people that I didn't really feel one way or the other about, or guys that I didn't necessarily mind in the past, that the things that they had them doing here to kind of get into that Hulk Hogan groove, that to make it feel like old timey WWF, if you will, in many ways. I think it was just a bit like a comfort food for Hogan to have all these guys around. Now, Hulk probably didn't hang out with a lot of these guys outside of the business, but he knew them. He had worked with them. He'd been around them on the road for years. And so I think it was really just a comfort deal for Hogan to get his boys in here. It's kind of like back in the old days, they talk about Buddy Rogers. Anywhere he went, he had his troop of guys. Even the job guys, Buddy Rogers would bring in his own job guys for when he was in a territory. And that was kind of Hogan here. It was like, I'm bringing in some of my boys, dude.
Yeah, so we haven't gotten to where Kamala is.
Right.
In,
That's ways off.
Yeah, no, but still, like, I don't have I loved Kamala to death.
Oh, that's the
one of my, I can't say he's underrated because I don't think he's underrated, but for people who don't know, maybe he is underrated. But for me, like, I was a Kamala guy. And then in the era of podcasts, when I would then hear Kamala talk, he was always so grateful. Like here this man was, health issues. I never heard him complain. Like he always sounded like, I made good money. I don't have anything bad to say. The only bad thing I've ever heard him say is the Andre the Giant story, where he basically made it sound like he was about to shoot him.
Yeah,
I don't know if you ever heard that one.
Yeah, carried a gun with him to the ring or whatever.
Yeah.
Tucked it in his loincloth.
It's the only thing negative I've ever heard him say. Other than that, like he always seemed grateful for any and every spot that he had. He didn't make great money, but he just seemed like he was grateful. And just listening to him talk about his career over the years on different interviews, I always thought, man, he's, I'll never say a bad word, not another, but I'll never say a bad word about Kamala because I just loved him to death. And then, I got to see him as a kid. I watched him in Mid-South. I watched him in World Class. The famous story not famous, but the story Doc and I always tell on BTT is the very first time we saw him back in, that would have been 82-ish, 83-ish. They showed the vignette from Jerry Jarrett's, yard.
Yeah.
And you see it on World Class. He saw it on World Class first. I saw it on Mid-South first. Mm-hmm. And I'm a kid who's 7, 8 years old at that point. And I just remember being freaking terrified at this dude who, I don't know, I'm a kid. He's in the jungles in Africa, as we were told. Obviously, he wasn't. And they've got like dry ice or something in the water because there's smoke, or maybe they had a smoke machine. I don't know. I remember seeing some smoke here and there. And I'm just like, I was terrified. I thought this guy was going to find me and eat me. I mean, only to find out later in life, like, he's just this sweet, gentle man who just was as nice as can be to anybody I've ever talked to that knew him. And then you hear him on interviews. So I have no problem when they brought in Kamala. I don't have a problem with Tenta. I start getting a little weird when it comes to Duggan because, again, Mid-South guy, grew up watching Jim Duggan, loved him to death. He was phenomenal. I mean, he was a badass. He was a hell of a heel at first, becomes a fantastic babyface in the promotion, second behind only JYD. Just a phenomenal, just ass kicker, man. The dude was just a badass. But I got a problem when he comes in, because he comes in and, coming in with Hogan, and spoiler alert, if you're going to listen to us talk about this on BTT, he beats Steve Austin for the freaking U.S. title. It's like, no. And it makes me mad because now, we know what Austin ended up becoming. But here's the thing. When you go watch Austin during that era, Austin's phenomenal. He's so unreal. Like, you don't think of him as Stone Cold at that point, but in 93, 94, you start to hear the Stone Cold coming out. It's not there yet, but you can hear it. You're like, oh, that sounds like Stone Cold.
He's moving past the stunning at that point, in his promos and his personality. But, I grew up on Austin in Dallas and working with Chris Adams on ESPN. And so when he made it to the big time, when he made it to WCW in 1991, he felt like he belonged there. When I'm watching like, why is this guy in the minor leagues? By that point, we can call it the minor leagues anyway. So why is this guy working the territories? He looks like he belongs, just his look alone, a superstar. And of course, he off to the races in 91 for WCW. But certainly, he was one of my favorites to watch. By 1994, he was literally probably top two guys in WCW for me. So, like you said, Duggan randomly coming out with Steamboat's injury and beating Austin in like 30 seconds on top. Like, what is this shit? What, like Duggan's last couple of years in the WWF, he was physically limited. I mean, he was moving at, half of speed of what he once was. So it was just, I don't know, man. I didn't understand the whole thing.
Yeah. And so that's what I was saying. Like, so, Hogan's bringing his guys in, and Duggan ends up being one of them who's in, and he beats Austin in like 30 seconds to a minute because Steamboat was injured. And so I got a problem with that. Here we are. We have invested a lot of time into Steve Austin. And for the record, when he comes in 91, he's already good. It's not like he, to the point you made, it's not like he had to develop. Like, he's already cutting good promos. He's not Stone Cold Steve Austin, but he's cutting good promos as Stunning Steve Austin. He's really smug. The heel thing is there. I mean, he proceeds. He wins the first title he wins. It was a TV title. Then he's going to get the U.S. title. There's no reason why he should not have been WCW World Heavyweight Champion at some point. But Hogan derails that. Now, he will end up getting hurt. We know the story about how he ends up getting fired. So who knows? I said this what if a few weeks ago on the show to Doc and Harper. I was like, what if Hogan never comes in? Do we ever get Stone Cold Steve Austin in the WWF? Do we end up getting a version of Austin? Maybe that's not Stunning Steve Austin, where he's kind of like Stone Cold, but he's not really Stone Cold because that's a name that came out of the WWF system. And I know the story of how he got Stone Cold with his ex-wife, and she gave him his cup of coffee. He's like, it's Stone Cold. And that's how he got the name. I get it. But the point being, if Hogan never comes in and Austin doesn't get hurt, are we in a world where Austin is the top person? Because, I mean, it's all there, but he gets pushed to this. So many people get pushed to the side, but that was reckless. Having Duggan beat him that quickly for that title at that pay-per-view. It's like, what are we doing? And all because, we got Hogan's guys in here. And then last thing I'll say about, is Hogan's crew is coming in, because we haven't even talked about, Hogan and Flair. Honky Tonk Man. Come on. I got no Honky Tonk Man as a heel in WWF, mid-'80s. Good stuff, man. I mean, I hated him. I could not stand, seeing him dance and sing, and he got on my damn nerves, but he was doing his job. By 1994, I don't freaking want to see Honky Tonk Man on my TV. It literally felt like, okay, he's just another Hogan guy and here to just mess things up. And I don't even remember, honestly, I can't remember what specifically he does, because I know he's gone by the end of the year. But it's just, why are we putting this much time into him on Saturday night every single week when we got other stars that are moreover at this point in their career, better in the ring, and can do a whole lot more for this promotion? And it's sad because people like Vader get pushed down the chain, Sting gets pushed down. It's like, we're making room for all these other guys, but the guys who've been here struggling and really committed to this, we're just kind of like pushing them. I mean, Vader was world champion, and he's ended up being pushed down to mid-card matches and opening pay-per-view matches at one point, I believe. Yeah,
working Guardian Angel right now, Boss Man changing his gimmick, and then later on he'll be working with Duggan in the U.S. title role after being the Monster, like you talked about. He's already been solidified for years as the Monster, as the main eventer, working with Sting on top and things like that. So, and I get everybody can't main event every pay-per-view, but I'm with you in regards to how far down are you going to put Vader, because Hogan doesn't want to work with him right now, because Hogan probably fears working with Leon White in the ring at this point. Now, eventually they'll get in the ring, and then Hogan will say, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. That's a little bit down the road. But no, I'm totally on board with you. And when you talked about Honky Tonk Man, that one really sticks out to me, because he really hadn't even been in the WWE. He'd left at the beginning of 91, like January 91, he was gone. He was supposed to be in the Rumble, and then he's just not even there, and he's gone. So he's been off TV for, 91, almost 4 years before the Honky Tonk Man back to relevancy of some form. And you talked about all these guys who've been struggling and working hard and busting their ass and doing everything that's asked of them here. And they're not really getting anything more than a match on Saturday night or worldwide or whatever the case may be. Honky Tonk Man shows up, and overnight he has a new song. Of course, they're going to play off the Honky Tonk Man song in the WWF, but now he has a brand new song. I'm sure Jimmy Hart helped him put that together. And he has a music video for the song when he arrives. It's almost, and that's not too long after Hogan gets here. I mean, actually physically here. So it's just kind of crazy the time and the effort and the money they were willing to spend up front on somebody like Honky Tonk Man just coming in versus these guys that have been here for years.
It's again, to go back to the point I made about, I get why you need to bring in Hogan, and feel the need to, but the problem is what you get in bringing him in, because now you don't just bring him in, you bring in his influence in everything he wants, and thus you bring in the Honky Tonk Mans with the new song and the video and him appearing on Saturday night, and yet nobody wanted him to sing, but we also didn't want to see him at all. It wasn't just the singing. It's like, and I put it out of my mind that he's been gone since 91 from WWF. So yeah, 3 years later, he shows up and we're just supposed to just accept him. And I'm just, the thing about, here's the crazy part. The thing about Honky Tonk and Duggan that I don't feel when I looked at a guy like Paul Orndorff for whatever reason, because Orndorff's there well before. He's there years before this, right? Mm-hmm. I looked at Paul Orndorff and I didn't think WWF cast off with him in WCW.
Right.
Whereas with Hogan and then Duggan and Honky Tonk especially, I was like, oh, and I think it's just kind of the sequence of events. Orndorff is here well before Hogan.
Right.
But then what happens is when Hogan comes in, now it's like the parade of guys that were with Hogan and WWF during the peak. Oh, they're going to come in too. It's like it has a different feeling to it altogether. And I think that's like the problem you run into with what goes down during this era. It's like, yeah, all those guys start just trickling in with him, and you're like, oh boy. And that's the point Harper always makes. Like, okay, it's crazy, but you go, I've seen this before. I don't like this. Like, this is not new. And the thing is, in wrestling, the old rule is, or those old timers used to say, you could do it once every 7 years. I mean, it had been 7 years since we saw some of this stuff. Some of it not quite 7 years. I mean, like you said, Hogan was still champion when did Hogan last lose the WWF title?
93.
Prior
right,
to 90.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, it wasn't really old with him at that point, but like, so this stuff is just way too recent. And here we are just redoing it in another promotion with a different mat and different ring. It's not good. And the worst part, again, is those guys that got slid down, and Steve Austin losing the singles match for in 30 seconds at a pay-per-view. Come on, man. What are we doing?
Well, I think, another thing, and you make an excellent point with Orndorff coming in long before Hogan, so you really don't see that the same way you might see the Duggan and some of the other guys that trickle in. Now, when I saw John Tenta arrive, I go, oh shit, Earthquake's here too, and so that was kind of cool. But at the same time, it was Earthquake, but it was like they had a big feud, and that was still different to me than I was kind of excited for that one versus, there's Brutus Beefcake, there's Honky Tonk Man, there's Jim Duggan. Those guys, and for everything great that Duggan was, and I'm totally on board with you, amazing stuff in Mid-South, the UWF, he was just the man. It's great. I love watching him work the gang and pretty much anybody else. He's in the slobber knockers all day long with Jim Duggan. But by the 1990s, he had become essentially a novelty act in the ring as far as get the 2x4, get the flag, wave it, USA, ho, and he really wasn't very active on the offense per se, and he certainly wasn't really taking any bumps. So I feel like some of these guys stuck out because here comes the troop of guys that were from the last generation of the when they had already peaked as far as what they were going to do in the ring, unfortunately. And so those are the ones that stuck out to me. And now a few years after this, I saw Honky Tonk Man at an indie show locally, and he got in the ring and he did his little gimmick and he sang the song and he was wearing his jumpsuit, and I was marking out, having a great old time, and we were because we were sitting front row at an indie show, and that's where it belongs. It's a novelty act, and I enjoyed that. I don't need to see him on my TV screen working Johnny B. Bad, in a TV title type situation or something.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you hit the nail on the head with Duggan, and it pains me to say this as a guy who's a big fan of him to this day. It's literally the novelty act. He comes out, he hits his waves the flag, comes out, the music, and hits the football tackle, and it's a 1, 2, 3, America, like nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't like that act in '94. No, and I definitely don't want you doing that act after you defeated Steve Austin in 30 seconds at a pay-per-view because Steamboat's hurt. It's like, what are we even doing here? And that's the one that gets me more than anything, along with Honky Tonk too. But that one just claws at me because I'm like, this dude became the biggest star in the business a few years after this. And this is what we did him. And it's not like he did anything to deserve that at that point in time.
Right.
It's like this guy needed to have the rocket on his back. And boy, Hogan comes in and that ain't gonna happen. That's my big issue with what happened with Duggan and Austin there.
Relive the glory days of Memphis wrestling with the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. Each week, we go back in time to review USWA Championship Wrestling from the 1990s, episode by episode. Join us for watch-alongs, behind-the-scenes stories, and exclusive interviews with people who were there and lived it. Whether you grew up watching it or you're discovering it for the first time, this podcast is your ringside seat to Memphis wrestling history. It's all a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Listen now at USWApodcast.com.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here. Lots of new stuff happening here at WrestleCopia, and I want to update you on everything going on with the brand right now. First and simple, if you haven't checked out our website at WrestleCopia.com, it's a great way to keep up with the latest episodes of all of your favorite Copia programming, from the Wrestling Memory Grenade to Regional Wrestling with the Territory Talk, the Wrestling Stoop with the legendary Bob Roop, Professor Dan Ginnity and the Pro Wrestling Academy, and all the other great podcasts from Gene Jackson, Bob Smith, Dave Dynasty, and the boys from the Other Ship. And of course, all of those programs also available at your favorite podcast streaming platforms. And if you want to stay up to date with everything going on in the Copia world, all the latest news, random thoughts, fun videos, pictures, and more, make sure to join the more than 33,000 followers over at Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. Don't be left out. Please also follow us at the former Twitter, now X, at Wrestling Grenade, and subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. Would also greatly appreciate you leaving us a 5-star review at your favorite podcast apps, guys, because every positive review makes our podcasts more visible in the algorithms, if you will, which allows us to continue to grow. Now, for those who have been asking about merchandise, WrestleCopia merch, you can find plenty of designs for our t-shirts, hats, magnets, stickers, coffee mugs, and more over at the TeePublic store. That is tpublic.com/user/WrestleCopia. And last but definitely not least, it's what keeps the entire machine going. I'm talking about patreon.com/WrestleCopia. Now with 3 major tiers and tons of Patreon exclusive next level content for our supporters. Remember guys, no subscription, cancel any time, but I think you'll like the content that we're offering there for any budget you may have. And you can sign up right now, patreon.com/WrestleCopia. We appreciate your support in helping us pay the bills to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network running and enabling us to continue to bring you all of the quality programming that we offer.
This is Wrestling Nostalgia, the podcast that dives into wrestling history. Hey, wrestling fans, I'm Dave Dynasty, and if you enjoy podcasts that are knowledgeable and history-driven, then Wrestling Nostalgia is for you. With great guests and fun interviews, there are over 200 episodes in our archives. We chat with several first-time guests and often cover topics not discussed on other podcasts. Look up Wrestling Nostalgia on your favorite podcast platform and visit all of our links at linktree/WrestlePod. That is linktr.ee/RASSLEPOD. And remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.
Well, you know, it's a necessary evil, like you said, to bring Hulk Hogan in. He adds a whole lot of credibility to the WCW product. as a headliner. Obviously, the name is a household name. A lot of people throw a lot of wrestling name. Oh, this guy's a household name. No, Hulk Hogan was a household name. People that didn't watch wrestling knew what Hulk Hogan was. If they saw that, oh, that's that Hulk Hogan guy. You know, my grandparents didn't watch wrestling. They knew a handful of guys because of me, because I had it on TV every weekend. But my grandfather loved it. Oh, that's old Hulky. That's what my grandfather called him when he walked in. He was not a wrestling fan, but he was old Hulky to my grandpa. So even he knew who Hulk Hogan was. So for WCW to acquire him here, a lot of people would say, oh man, I he used to work, wrestle in the WWF. And so it turned a lot of eyes. I didn't remember my dad, who was just a casual fan in the 80s and not a fan at all in the 90s. He ordered a couple pay-per-views that Hulk Hogan was on in WCW just because it was like Hogan was almost a novelty act to him at that point, because it's like, oh, he's back. I have an opportunity to see him do his old Hulk up gimmick, So I know they got a few buys out of people that likely weren't necessarily ever even going to watch WCW products. So it was a brilliant move for Eric Bischoff and a hell of a coup to go get him. But it also meant, as you said, creative influence, not just of his own stuff, but who's coming in? Who am I bringing in? And of course, the whole money deal they worked out, the massive guaranteed contract, percentage of the pay-per-view revenue that he's on. And yeah, we're off to the races though. Hulk Hogan has arrived, and you guys have now, unfortunately, or fortunately for some of your listeners anyway, I'm sure, he's made his transition fully to the WCW, man.
Yeah. It a necessary evil. And look, I'll say it because I said it a little while ago. Yeah, he was a house. You nailed it. He's a household name who made a difference, and you could market that in a way that you didn't have anybody else at that point, because they hadn't been that Hogan level of a star across the country during the national expansion. Yes, you have Ric Flair. Don't get me wrong there. I know you have Flair, and you have other people who are close to, or they are close to household names, but none of them was at the level of Hogan. Only one probably is Flair at that point, as I think about it, just thinking about who's on the roster. And that's not saying like guys like Vader and Sting aren't names, obviously. I don't mean that. I'm just saying from a Hulk Hogan level, Flair's probably, I'm trying to think, am I missing somebody? But I'm thinking, Flair's probably the only one at that point.
Yeah, close enough to it. And even I'd argue Flair was never at the stature of Hulk Hogan nationally outside of the wrestling fans. I mean, there was a lot of people that did like Ric Flair. There were a lot of, people that didn't follow, because in the South though, WCW was it. I remember when my dad was living down in Florida, he would, remember the day when people wrote letters? He used to write me letters up here when he was stationed down there for the Air Force. And he would say, hey, there's a different wrestling down here that we watch. It's called, the NWA. And he would write, there's a Four Horsemen. And I had already started watching it on TBS, so I knew who he was referencing. But so I thought that was kind of cool that depending on where you live too, the names are a little bigger in different areas. But yeah, I'd argue that Flair up until this point was easily the biggest known commodity in WCW. No doubt about it.
Yeah. I mean, he's Arn had been in the WWF, but he doesn't have that. His run isn't like super long. So I'm like, you just don't have the guys. I know Vader he's wrestled in Japan, and he's been with WCW for years now. And even when Funk comes in, he's a name, but obviously, but they're just, you don't have that Hogan level name. So I don't blame them for trying. I say
no, yeah,
because they had some issues. There are, if you go through the records, they're going to buildings and they ain't putting a lot of people in. We oftentimes, not oftentimes, but all the time, whenever we cover a pay-per-view or a clash, as we get to them, I'll go over, okay, here's how many people were there. And, it's always, okay, so you got 10,000. Okay. And then we play a guessing game. Okay, Doc Harper, how many you think paid of the 10,000? And they're like, it's funny now because we'll go, well, 5,000. It's like it's automatic guess to guess maybe really like 50 to 60% are paying. So it's like, dang. They're not only are they not on some of these pay-per-views, getting a lot of buys, but then when they're having these pay-per-views and clashes, there's a whole lot of giveaways, which you don't want that either happening. There's going to be some giveaways. You're going to have comps, but that was the other part. So yeah, you're trying to solve a lot of that by bringing in a guy like Hulk Hogan. So, again, I don't blame him. It is what it is. But it leads to what we get down the line.
Well, yeah, it's a temporary solution, like you said, too. I mean, up until the NWO, Hogan was having a rough go of it by the end of 1995. Lots of booing, depending on the city.
Oh, my God.
Those nitros, and it's unfolding right now before our eyes. We're covering the Monday Warfare, the Monday Night War history. And as we watch it, it's Hogan, you keep reading, going back to the Observers, going back to some of these other dirt sheets from the time, if you will, brother. Rag sheets, dude, as he calls them. But you go back and start reading it. Well, this is what the original plan was. This is what Hogan changed it to. This is what happened at the pay-per-view. Hogan got to the ring and changed the finish. And it's not, it feels like Hulk hears the boos and he's panicking. And he's like, what do I need to do? And he's doing all the wrong, I know what I need to do. Tomorrow night on Nitro, instead of having the Giant lay me out like originally planned, I'm going to come in there, beat the shit out of the Giant with a chair. Then I'm going to do Dusty Rhodes and run out later and beat the hell out of the Horsemen who are feuding with somebody completely different just because I'm here, So, Dusty loved to run in on other people's feuds.
Right.
And it's like Hogan's doing that too. And the crowd's just booing the living shit out of him all. It's like, that's not what they want. They want less. They want to see, let him sympathize with you a little bit. Dude, get your ass beat for once, So he's even grasping it. Like, what do I do to hang on? Obviously, the NWO will come around in '96, but it's fun watching that in '95. Not like I'm laughing at him or anything, but it's a weird dynamic because it's not doing what it did here when he first got here. The little boost of adrenaline, they get the shot in the arm when he arrives here at Bash at the Beach. It's a big deal, and it's Hogan and Flair right out of the gate. But it's like you said, where do you go from there?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. Like, I'm thinking back to when you're talking about late 95 and in early 96. Just remind me, I want to just mention when we get to, I know we weren't planning on talking about this, but yeah. I wanted to talk about Uncensored 96.
Absolutely.
But you're right. Like, you get to remind me, Ray, because I was trying to remember this and I didn't look it up. Okay. So end of 95 and early 96, yeah, he's getting booed, and it's just, the people are just like, this doesn't work for me, brother. Like, nobody like, we thought it was long in the tooth in 94. We get to 95 and 96, we're like, okay, this is getting out of hand. And I've never heard somebody say it like you, where he's almost starting to panic. Mm-hmm. Like, I can see that because you're so used to getting a certain reaction. Now, don't get me wrong, there'll be towns where you don't get the reaction that you get from in this town or that town. So, like, certain cities, you'll get a different reaction. I mean, the whole thing where, the NWA would go to Philly, it'd be a totally different environment, obviously, when you're in Charlotte, right? Yeah. Or some other town in the South. Yeah. But it's like that thing where this is happening far too frequently, and now he's starting to hit the panic button. And as Doc always tells me, he thought he was a face in 94, but he wasn't. Like, it just hasn't really, like, kicked in yet. And part of that is because he's got Flair, who kind of knows what to do in these matches, and to make, okay, Flair can have a match with a broomstick. I mean, the thing about the Bash at the Beach match in 94, like, there are people who are cheering for Flair if you go back and listen. Right. But that match was good. But, like, it's Flair, and that's why he's getting that's why that match is getting the reaction it's getting in the pops it's getting. Yeah. It's not because of, like, it ain't Hogan. Like, that's the thing. Like, I've watched that match like 3 times in the last few months now, yeah, since we already covered it. And I'm like, man, Flair made this match magical. Now, the problem was, we didn't want to see Hogan win even after all these years. We were like, maybe we're in an alternate universe and hopefully the timeline jumped and Flair wins. But that didn't happen. Yeah. So Hogan wins, but it's like, he's still at that moment. It's almost like he thinks, oh, this is 1986. Even when he's hulking up, you're like, oh God. But it's because of Flair selling. Flair knows how to do everything and anything in the moment to get whatever needs to get over. And that's what Flair did in that match. So he makes the whole thing. And the thing was, like we said when we were talking about it, we were like, man, Hogan thinks he did this, but this was Flair. This whole match was Flair's doing. And by the way, that pay-per-view, if you can step away from letting what happens with Hogan defeating Flair anger you, because it does to me after all these years, it's a good pay-per-view. Like, And the main event's not bad. We just didn't want Hogan to win.
So, if I remember correctly, they gave everybody time on that show. Like all the matches went long. It was just they brought the who's who out for that pay-per-view.
Yeah, for the most part, they all got enough time. I was trying to remember because I think Vader and Vader, I'm gonna call him Boss Man. I know
Boss
he's
Man, yeah.
I know he's the guardian angel, which is another thing we've had tons of fun talking about.
Yeah.
I think that was the shortest match. They didn't get a lot of time. That match did not get what it should have got, from what I recall, and it was like second on a card or something like that.
Yeah,
so it wasn't. Yeah, that one. That was not the good thing about that. But, again, they're long in the tooth on 95. I'd argue, too, even that first match, they're long in the tooth a little. But it's Flair who gets it over. I mean, it's Flair is the one who's doing all he can do. And let's be honest, like that card, like you had Shaq there, Mr. T. Like there's a lot of fanfare and people, and they're in Orlando. So, of course, people were popped for Shaq at the time.
Right.
But yeah, Hogan was just long in the tooth, man. And even then, like, if Flair doesn't get what he gets out of him in that match, I'm just like, do the fans start turning on him on that first match back? They probably don't, but I don't know. I've thought about that before, but Flair had such a good match with him, it didn't happen.
Watching those early Hogan pay-per-views in WCW, it felt like you were watching a WCW pay-per-view, and then you would get to the Hogan match, and to me, it was almost, in many ways, cosplay, or like I'm playing with my toys, my action figures or something. It just feels like I'm watching a cartoon all of a sudden. And I don't mean necessarily the debut here with Flair, but some of the the early matches he does on pay-per-view here after this one particularly. But it's like you get this WCW feel throughout the entire card, and then it's like something's different here in the main event. And Hogan's just kind of, I don't know, he does things differently. And I don't want to say it's New York style either. It's just Hulk Hogan style, and it's so weird, but obviously Flair knows how to work with that. And so they do have a hell of a match here as Hogan debuts. But it's like you said, now all the boys are in the back, and I don't mean the wrestlers, I mean the higher ups, Eric Bischoff and whatever Ted Turner's reading about the buy rates and things. And they're crediting all of this to Hulk Hogan. There's no doubt about that. I don't think they're going, boy, I'm glad we had Ric Flair there to help Hulk through that. It's, look what Hogan did for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think anybody's saying that, but I mean, if I challenge anybody to go watch that match. And I'm really trying not to be like the person who hates Hulk Hogan. It is what it is, like at this point in my life. But because I don't hate him, it's just
right.
It's just he wasn't he wasn't and will not ever be WCW to me. I get that he came in 94 and he's there for many years until the promotion goes down, but he just wasn't WCW to me. But credit Flair, who can have a great match with anybody. I mean, anyone. God, let's go look at the match he had with JYD when JYD just couldn't do anything at that Clash. Ric Flair can have a match with anyone and anything. And he made that match that night the coronation of what it needed to be for Hogan winning that title. Anybody else in WCW in that moment, I don't know, outside of maybe Ricky Steamboat could have too, but it would have been different because Steamboat and Flair were just but Steamboat would have had a good match with him. Arn would have had a good match with him, but there's no one else that it could have been what it ends up being at Bash at the Beach and how good it gets over and the reaction that it got from the fans, unless it's Ric Flair. Now, at the same time, I realize Ric Flair is the multiple-time world champion, so of course it had to be Flair, but there's no one else. And that's probably what you end up seeing down the line when it's not Flair in these main events that Hogan's in pay-per-views. It's just, it starts to just quickly lose its luster for two reasons. Hogan's long in the tooth, and two, it ain't Ric Flair that's in there with him. Now, you couldn't keep doing Ric Flair because you got to change something at some point, but it was the perfect dance partner for that first feud. Unfortunately, it's got a shelf life.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, we see that, and it's so funny. You talked about Hulk Hogan being there for so many years, and he always felt out of place to you. It's funny to me. I remember when Lex Luger returns, when he jumps back from the WWF to WCW on night. I don't know if it's the first conversation they have. It might be the second week. I think it's the second week of Nitro. But Hogan says something, and I'm paraphrasing here, of like, oh, what's this outsider doing here, brother? What's his deal? And to me, it felt like, Lex Luger's home. right? Because I grown up on Lex,
Right.
and so Hogan was the outs, but it was so funny Hogan questioning like, "Who's this guy from that other place, dude? This is my house. This is the house Hogan built," kind of deal, and it was so funny to listen to him tell it that, and I truly believed in his mind when he cut that promo. He really thought that. He thought that's what the fans were thinking with him, and I mean, I just remember thinking, "Oh, Lex is home, and you're questioning him about where his allegiance lies and whatnot." And so it's Hogan from the WWF world who thinks he now runs WCW. Hell, he'd been there just over a year at that point. So it's kind of fun there, and they do so quickly after this. You talked about where do you go from here? They bring Flair back in the cage, and then he quote unquote retires, even with that whole cage match deal. And clearly they had ideas of what do we do after this? Not a great idea, bringing in Brother Brutai with him.
Oh my God. So I haven't watched that in a very long time. I'm talking about Starrcade 94.
Yeah.
We'll watch it soon because we'll be getting to it in the next few months on the show.
Yeah.
So this is why I said what I said about, I get why it's a good idea to have Hogan and get him and sign him. The problem is what you get with him. And Starrcade, arguably your biggest event of the year, because sometimes I think Halloween Havoc was, but that's just me because I feel like there were some really good Halloween Havoc cards. But let's just, for the sake of argument, say Starrcade, your biggest pay-per-view of the year. Your main event ends up with Hogan and Beefcake, and I'm just like, nah. This is the point. This is the point I make when I'm saying like, yeah, he's a necessary evil. You need him because you gotta bring him in because he helps get that audience that you're looking for, and he's more mainstream and people in the mainstream know him. But who's clamoring for Hogan and Beefcake in a main event at Starrcade 94?
When he turned, God bless Tony Schiavone and the way he puts that over. Oh, he butchered a friendship. But I could have done without the whole, and it's so overbooked. And I'm not trying to spoil things for your program you guys got coming up at Halloween Havoc. But at the same time, Beefcake's doing the turn. All of a sudden, on the other side of the ring, Earthquake's there. It's like, what the fuck is going on? I can't even, there's too much at the same, like, I can't even process this. So what story are you telling me here? Is Beefcake the lead heel? Because Earthquake was, he was the guy that put Hogan in the hospital way back in 1990. So it was so weird, some of the ideals that they had to get these guys in there and kind of, just make them known that hey, they're here now. This is the cool kids class. This is the place to be now. This is the table you want to be at. Is WCW. I'm bringing all these guys. You remember these guys back in the heyday when the WWF was peaking. And so I think that's kind of the idea that they were going with here.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because as you mentioned a little while ago, talking about 95 and then 96, it really starts getting to the point where it's like, okay, like if you're feeling it in 90, that's the thing. Like, not to be negative, but of course that's what I'm being. You feel it in 94. Now, part of that is because you know what's coming. It's not like if you're in the moment in 94 and you don't know what's coming, you can kind of like tolerate it a little more. But once you know what's coming, you're like, oh boy, damn, this is coming. What are we going to do here? Like, am I really going to have to sit through this? That's the hard part about knowing the history of it. Now, then you go back, you're like, man, we really got to, like, they really are going to do this and then keep doing it and keep doing it. And they're going to keep doubling down. And all the while, in Doc's words, he doesn't realize he's a heel, he being Hogan. Like, at what point do we just, it's like anything, any mistake you make in life, at some point you have to recognize to yourself, okay, I made a mistake, and you can't just keep pushing forward, because if you don't eject, it's just going to be more mistakes on top of the mistakes you've made. At some point, you got to eject. Hogan, like, he had no self-awareness. Now, to be fair, he's got yes men telling him he's the greatest thing on the planet probably during his time.
Sure.
Right. So he's not going to stop and say that nobody's in his ear trying to tell him, at least I'm thinking that. I don't know that for a fact, but I would bet and figure none of these people are in his ear because they're telling him what he wants to hear, because they're thinking about their, they need to think about themselves as well. So if they can keep pumping him up, that means they keep a job as well and they keep making good money. That's not happening. So nobody's going to be telling them that it's not good. I'll never forget too, and I'll say this, talking about when he eventually does turn heel with the NWO, I can't remember which wrestling documentary it was, but Hogan sat there and lied through his teeth, which he does a lot.
Oh, yeah, sure.
When it comes to wrestling. Hogan said something like, I remember sitting there, brother, and talking to Jimmy, and Jimmy was like, brother, are you listening to them? It sounds like they're starting to boo. And brother, me and Jimmy looked at each other. Oh, okay, yeah, brother. I guess it's, you know what? Maybe it is time to turn, be a bad guy. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that is not how that went down.
Right.
And,
no, not at all.
And the thing is, it was like an A&E special, like many years ago, like in 2003 or something. I saw this and I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? And that's not what happened, but like he's convinced himself, or he's told enough lies that he figures I could just say this and it'll sound good. Because at the end of the day, a lot of wrestlers, they're always working, even when they're not. And Hogan just never knew when to stop working. So that was his way of working. But yeah, it just kept spiraling out of control to the point where it's like, okay, this is not going good. Hey, I did a question for you though, Ray, because I can't remember. At what point in 96 did he step away for a little while and was off TV? Because I do remember that.
I don't remember if he leaves completely. I mean, he works. There's a January Clash in Vegas, I think it is, and he will work that Mega Powers tag match. I don't remember if he leaves before that and just comes back for that and leaves again, or if he leaves right after that. But yeah, there is a good period before he comes back. He's gone. Yeah. And then he'll pop back up for that awesome uncensored that we can talk about whenever you're ready, man.
Oh my God. So yeah. So what I was trying to remember about that was like, I remember him being off of TV and I just remember thinking at first, haven't seen Hulk Hogan in a while. And then it was like, never thought about it. Oh, this dude's not here. Like, and then they ran like on Saturday night, this vignette of him riding his motorcycle. I was like, oh, he's not gone. He's just, and I wasn't a dirt sheet reader at the time. So I wasn't, elbows deep in anything. And I was like, okay, he's not gone. He's just laying low and still thinks he's a face. And cause he's got the yellow and red and he's orange and he's riding a motorcycle and they're making it sound like, oh, good old Hulk Hogan. Yeah. He'll be back soon. And I just was like, okay. All right. Uncensored 96. I had to look this up. I had to look it up because Doc and Harper and I talk about this pay-per-view all the time. The only thing we talk about was how horrible that Doomsday Cage deal was. That has to be, and I feel bad saying this because Randy Savage, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Luger, Sullivan, there are heavy hitting stars in that match. That's got to be one of the worst things I've ever seen.
The way they promote it, the way they build up, it's like they don't really know the rules of the match until the day of the program either. So they're still trying to figure this out as they go along. And then you have the guys, the monstrosity of the cage. And I remember that was a last minute buy. That was an impulse buy at the last minute. Probably a lot of begging or something on my end. I don't really remember how the hell I wound up getting that pay-per-view, but I remember getting it. And there was a lot of little fun things underneath because, all the gimmick matches and no bleeding in WCW though. But then comes the cage match and all the Zeus, Z Gangsta was there. And the Ultimate Solution, who was about as jacked up as a human being I've ever seen. And Jeep Swenson, of course. And Brian Pillman.
He was huge.
I never saw a body that looked like that before. And, surprisingly, he died of a heart attack at some point. Shocker. Brian Pillman was supposed to be part of that. And I remember when we went through this before, when we were covering some Monday Night War stuff before, Pillman pulled out because he had a goiter or something in his neck. It was something that grew all the time, and he would have it removed almost annually. But there was no harm, so he would just do it whenever time allowed. But he picked that weekend to have it removed so that he couldn't work the pay-per-view because I guess the rumor was Hogan wanted to pin him. Pillman was the hottest thing at that time with the crazy gimmick. He was really getting over with that crazy gimmick he was doing. And so Hogan wanted to get the heat off of that Pillman gimmick. And so Brian took it upon himself to go in for surgery. So wise decision. He will never be remembered as being part of that match.
Good for him. I didn't realize that until you said it. I was just thinking about, so that pay-per-view, we've referenced it numerous times.
Yeah.
I had to look today to see what else was on that pay-per-view because and I remember watching it live.
Mm-hmm.
I could not remember. That match was so bad, that main event, that I couldn't, and I hated it so much, I couldn't remember anything else from that show.
PTSD, man.
I couldn't. It's got to be it, because I remember watching that match and I was like, this is stupid. And I then, but in my mind, like, again, this is 30 years ago now. I'm going, wait, what else happened that night? Because I could not recall. I had to look it up. You could have told me, you could have made me guess the other matches. I would not have even, there's no way I would have ever figured out. I could have like got around to being like, oh, okay, well, I know, DDP was in WCW at the time. Like, I could have started naming guys,
sure, right,
like Sting and Harlem Heat and Road Warriors. I could have started naming people who were there, but I could not have given you the matchups. That's how horrible that cage match was. It was just terrible. And the other thing I remember that from that pay-per-view was actually the build up to it, in that I feel like I heard Dusty Rhodes on commentary a million times on either, was he doing Worldwide at that point?
I know he was doing pro. He was doing pro. I don't know.
Was he pro?
Yeah.
So I was trying to remember which show it was I saw. Dusty had the funniest way of promoting whenever they were in Tupelo, Mississippi, baby. And that used to pop me whenever he was promoting the city and venue for that pay-per-view. Other than that, the two things I remember are Dusty promoting it on whatever show he was on at the time, and how bad that cage match was. I don't even remember, outside of Hogan and Savage winning it, I don't even remember the finish. I just know they won. But I could not, that shit was so bad. It was so damn bad. It completely just, my mind just was like, you're not remembering any of this other than you hated it.
At one point they all leave the cage, they wrestle in the ring, they go back to the cage, and the kicker, the whole thing is the finish. Hogan and Savage start to leave the cage, and Hogan turns around and points to Randy, and Randy has to jump back through the cage door, go in there and cover whoever the hell was Zeus or whoever the hell was laid out, and pin them. So they didn't even know their own finish. They left the cage. Savage was going out the door as he turned around, jumped back in, made the cover, and then left. It was terrible, man. Even Randy wanted out of there. It was
okay. Again, this is what you get when you get that doesn't work for me, brother.
Can you imagine, Mike, the millions of matches you've seen? Have you ever seen a guy forget to pin their fucking opponent before they left the ring? They wanted out of the ring so bad?
No, I mean, like, I'm sure somebody will say, well, you covered this one, you don't remember this, but I mean, I've seen guys pop up right after the pin because they just forgot that they were supposed to sell it, but never a situation where the guy who's supposed to make the pin is like, I'm out of here, man. I'm done with this crap, bro. And Hogan's got to remind him to get back in. Like, come on. Yeah. It was just horrible. Like, what the hell were we doing? And then I felt bad. Like, whenever, again, I'm going to have to watch it at some point. Then I feel bad for like Ric Flair, Arn Anderson. These are guys who've had fantastic matches in their career. Like, they are top of the heap of stars that we grew up watching. Like, and then even the other guys, like, they got Ming and Barbarian, Lex Luger. Like, we have superior talent in this match. And these people that we're paying good money to, this is what we came up with for a pay-per-view that we're going to make people buy. So we wasted Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Ming, Barbarian, Lex Luger, Kevin Sullivan on this. Like, it just, and I just remember thinking, what the hell? Because, I mean, think about, I don't know their salaries during that time in 96, but I know they're getting paid. Think about all of the people in that match and imagine adding up their salaries from that time, what they got paid from that pay-per-view. And the reverse money printer just like is going off in my eyeballs. Like, you're just hemorrhaging money for nothing here. Right. Like, it was so bad. Like, just to see them work through the different levels in the case. Like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, but it was definitely a time in WCW. The only thing I remember from that entire pay-per-view was Regal versus Finlay, Finley's first run through, because Finley, they're stiffing each other because they know each other from the old days. And Finley gets hold of Regal's schnoz at some point, and his nose literally explodes like a forearm or a European uppercut or something. Regal's nose just explodes with blood just everywhere at some point in that. That's the only thing I remember from that entire pay-per-view. That's my takeaway. That and Randy Savage forgetting to make a pin. That's pretty much
and those two, Finley and Regal. They had some wars. You can't talk about WCW during that era without talking about how great like their stuff was, because they were phenomenal together.
Oh, totally.
Like you said, just beating the hell out of each other. I mean, it's that old thing. Like when me and my co-host Lance Peterson talk about world class, and you see Kevin Von Erich in the ring, and he's just potatoing the hell out of people and just stiffing people. Like I always scream, somebody tell him it's a work. Like you watch a Finley and Regal match, I always say to myself, somebody tell him it's a work.
Every time I do a show, sometimes we do the territory stuff. I do it with Jamie Ward, and somebody's coming out of Dallas and they're working Georgia, or they're working Mid-South, and they got their arm bandaged up or their leg. I go, they must have just worked Kevin on the way out the door, because it was always a war with Kevin. Yeah, that shit was real to him. Damn it. Eat your heart out, Brett.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, you just sit there and watch some of the, I know you watch some of the matches that he had, and I'm just like, dude, somebody please smarten this dude up. Yeah. I mean, there's that country whipping match with them and the Freebirds. I'm like, holy crap. Kevin thinks this is a shoot. Like did anybody tell him that they're supposed to be working? It's just he is so unreal the way he just fires off. It's really incredible.
That's the entire reason the Freebirds needed all those pharmaceuticals to begin with, to step in the ring with Kevin Von Erich. That's the story of this whole thing. That's the ticket.
Yeah. So I mean, I say it lovingly, kind of to just say, man, Finley and Regal, they had some, this is during the Hogan era when people are tired of him. Regal and Finley are having, some good wars, and it's really good TV. I mean, there's a lot of talent there at the time. It's just, we're on our ass because we're tired of seeing Hogan.
Yeah. And I hate to, this wasn't meant to be just a Hogan trash fest. There's
right.
He did a lot.
Come up that way.
No, he did a lot for the company. At the end of this is like the Stewie Griffin compliment sandwich here with the crap in the middle here. But I will say this much: it was a wise decision business wise, because without Hogan, there was probably never going to be a Nitro. I don't think Ted Turner's going to pull a trigger. I don't. If there's no Nitro, how do you pull off an NWO? Does Ted Turner ever want to throw the money in for Hall and Nash later on? He sees, these are guys, high up in the WWF. We can add them to the Hogan and the Macho Man and this and that. And it all snowballs really downhill for, WCW. And they had, like you said, ups and downs along the way, and eventually it will come to an end. But there was a big 83-week period where they did very well. And without Hogan, we don't get there. We don't have that. I don't know. As cool as it was to see the Hall and Nash jump, because I was a WWF kid, and to see Razor Ramon and Diesel, the top guys in the WWF on WCW, that was surreal, even though I knew it was coming. And I didn't know how it was coming. So what they did up front, that was cool. And obviously, no matter what they claim, whatever Eric claims, they were portraying themselves as being from the WWF. Whether they said that or the implications were there. And that was just such a cool, realistic deal. But there was nobody else on earth that I think could have pulled off the third man, because they said if it wasn't Hogan, it was going to be Sting. That's all they had in their back pocket. That's fine and dandy, but I don't know that I would have bought that the same. It's like, wow, Sting turned. Okay, what do we do with this? I just don't know if it would have had the same effect. With Hogan turning, like you said, he was always the WWF guy. So it felt right with Hogan in that position.
Yeah, so the thing that Doc and I and Harper and I we were talking about this at one point. I don't know if it's recently with Hogan coming in, but I always have said now, the thing about him coming in, again, he's a necessary evil. It's got an expiration point, but part of the thing is when you bring him in 94 and then he starts having that run of, okay, people are tired of him, like you just discussed, and he's getting the booze and stuff, and he's like just panicking and trying to change finishes and all this stuff. That actually is very helpful once you know what goes down in 96 when he does become the third man. Yeah. Because it's like didn't want what was happening to happen as it's, going down the toilet bowl in 95.
Yeah.
I mean, and you can see it in the pay-per-view buys and everything. I'm like, it's starting to just,
they're forcing
come
merchandise. Every time he comes out to work, half the crowd in the first 3 rows have Hulk merch all of a sudden. Too.
Yeah.
They're giving it away just to the perception is reality. We want you to look like you're over. So we're going to, give away all these merch to the crowd, around the first few rows. So the camera picks it up.
Yeah. So like all this is happening as his popularity, people are just exhausted with him. So you get to that point where, Uncensored 96 happens and that catastrophe of a main event. And then you start pushing through in 96 and it's like, oh, and then we reach the point of where we're at with, Bash at the Beach 96 in the turn. Like I told Doc and Harper, you don't get the reaction you get at that moment with him turning unless the people have been just tired at that point of him. Like they didn't put it like this. They were doing some long-term storytelling without realizing they were doing long-term storytelling for the eventual turn.
Right.
At least that's how I see it in my mind. Now I realize there's people that knew it was a work. Like we all knew it was a work at that point, but like there was a long-term storytelling that they were telling, they weren't intending to tell it.
Right.
It was like they accidentally told it to where it's like, okay, people are really exhausted with this dude, but now he's turned. And I think you're right, Ray. I don't know if there's ever a Nitro if you don't bring Hogan in 94. And I realize Nitro is a year and a half after the fact, but I don't think there's a Nitro. I don't think WCW even lasts as long as it does if you don't bring in Hogan when you bring him in. Although we get that run, it might not last till when it lasts.
No.
If we don't have him. So that's all.
I was going to ask you that earlier too. I forgot the question at the time was, do you think Ted Turner even hangs on to WCW for as long as he does? If Hulk Hogan doesn't come in, does Ted just fold up in 96 or 97 and just say, this WCW thing's not working. I can't compete. I don't know necessarily with Vince McMahon, but just in business, you know what I mean? In general, like I'm losing my ass here. I cut my losses. I don't know how it would have fared, but without Nitro, completely different game for everybody involved. And without the competition, I don't know what would have happened. There would have been no, and I'm not a big fan of the Attitude Era, but there would have been no Attitude Era. There would have been, we gotta take things another step, further away from the kid stuff, the kid family friendly stuff that Vince had done up until a certain point, So I don't know, because we saw how complacent Vince got with WWE after WCW. And a lot of people complained about the product for years on end after the fact when there was no competition to that level. And so it's a very different world, obviously, without Hulk Hogan arriving in WCW. So we did a lot for the business. And, hey, we got the NWO. We got the whole Monday Night War out of that. We got a lot of good stuff, all thanks to the Hulkster brother being a part of World Championship Wrestling. So just remember that, Mike. I know Harper's not going to give it shit, but just remember that the next time you guys are doing an episode, at least. Had John Paz on here last week, and he loves Hulk Hogan so much. Sorry, John, if you're listening this week, you had to know this was coming, though. John knows how I feel about Hogan. It goes way back. I was a Warrior guy, and he was a Hogan kid, so we were on opposite sides of the fence there. But, oh, man. Mike, I want to thank you so much, man, for stopping by. 90 minutes flew by just having some fun conversation about an era that, like I said, I haven't really went back and watched a whole lot of pay-per-views, yes, but TV not so much until recently. I want to thank my son for that. So I'm looking forward to being able to watch some of this very shortly here with my son. School's going to be out, and I know he's going to pick business back up there coming out of, what was that, Spring Stampede pay-per-view. So, yeah, that's where we're going to pick up. But, Mike, before you go, you talked a little bit about Lance Peterson a little bit ago. Here in WrestleCopia, we do regional wrestling where we talk the territories, but BTT has the world-class cast. You also recently covered the Bash at the Beach pay-per-view. Why don't you tell them how they can listen to that stuff there on your Patreon?
Yeah, all that's on Patreon. Just go to tinyurl.com/Patreon BTT, or just go to Patreon and search Booking the Territory, and you will find it there. Our Patreon has been around since 2017. I want to say we started it 2 or 3 years in. So there's plenty there, video versions of what we discuss, the audio versions, obviously. We have done every WCW pay-per-view dating back from where we are in 94, which is Bash at the Beach. We're a little past that now. All the way back to, the first Starcade. So all of that is available on Patreon. Every single Clash of the Champions we are through 27 now we have done. So 1 through 27 are available. Is it 28? I always forget. All available on Patreon. And yes, Lance Peterson and I do the World Class Cast, which is I'm not gonna say an episode by episode, because sometimes we do 2 episodes, sometimes we do 3. Sometimes we have coming up, we're going to be covering the first Parade of Champions from 84 when Kerry beats Flair for the title. We have been covering that since 2018. So we've done almost every episode of World Class. We did so many of them. We started back from where we started and kind of did it a little different, where we didn't go as in depth with some of the enhancement talent matches and whatnot. And if you don't know who Lance Peterson is, he's SMU heavyweight on Twitter. I can't put over anyone else enough in terms of their knowledge of World Class. He doesn't need to look things up. He's like a book. It's in his brain. He lived and breathed it. He was at the Sportatorium all the time. He has this stuff memorized like it's in an incredible manner. So he does the World Class Cast with me. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes it's every 2 weeks. Sometimes it's once a month. It just depends on what's going on and what we're covering. But that is available on Patreon. There's probably close to 1,000 Patreon shows at this point. I forget. I would have to look. It's a lot because we've been doing it for many, many years. So all of that's available if you become a patron to us. And it's tinyurl.com/Patreon BTT. Also, my buddies Mike Prue, JV, and Rick Beebe, they cover ECW on the show. From the the days before it was ECW. Well, it was ECW. It was Eastern Championship Wrestling through Extreme. And then Sean Sparks and my friend Half Pint, they also cover random stuff from the classic days. Right now, they've been covering USA Championship Wrestling from Knoxville, Ron Fuller's old promotion. So a lot of stuff there, a lot of stuff available. And Ray, I want to thank you again. First off, thank you for letting me plug all that.
Absolutely, man.
Hopefully I wasn't too long-winded, but I appreciate it. And I remember I was trying to, as you're asking me that question about our Patreon and stuff, I was trying to remember the first time I quote unquote met you on Twitter. It feels like it was a few years ago. I think I either saw a tweet or you had followed me and I followed you back. And I was like, oh, okay, this guy covers classic stuff. And I remember listening to some of I'm going to call it the early Grenade stuff that you and
Steve.
Was it Steve covered?
Yeah.
Y'all were covered. Y'all may have been around doing something around the same time as us in the year
89 NWA. Yep.
Okay, so we were probably I remember y'all were covering, so I remember listening to some stuff, and you guys were both really knowledgeable on it. So it was cool to finally connect with you and meet via the podcast, because Ray and I have never spoken before outside of DMs or exchanges on Twitter. So First time we've ever talked. So I greatly appreciate the invite very much, and allow me to just share my passion, just like you have on pro wrestling and the things that get on our nerves. And by no means did we mean this to be a Hulk Hogan bashing session. It's just where I am right now in the promotion.
It's where we are. Right? Well, I cover the Grenade right now. We're in 89 WWF. Outside of my little dig here or there, I'm not burying the Hulkster. So it's a little, it was due. I that's why Mike was invited on here. Just for that very reason. I said it's time to get some Hulk Hogan hate out. I'm just kidding, guys. But no, it was a blast, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out and doing this. And it was about 6 years ago, because that's when we started the Grenade show. And I remember somebody going, "There's already somebody doing the NWA 89." I mean, I think you just started 89, and I was just starting the Grenade. And I go, I hope this guy doesn't get pissed off at me, but there would be no Grenade if there wasn't NWA 89, because there was no 1B for me. I was like, if I'm going to start this is what I'm going to do. And so you guys were doing it at the same time. Obviously, very different. You guys, you had your shtick down and having a great time. And it's always fun to listen to you guys. You never know. I'm sure you never know what's going to be said next. So it's
let me say that. Yeah, look, if I can say that real quick, just so anybody out there who's hearing me for the first time.
Yeah.
What we do on BTT, we don't like to be like historians. So if we don't know something, we're just going to say, I don't know. And we'll start making stupid comments about what we don't know. And we kind of like bust each other's balls nonstop. It's just what we do. We've done it for years. It's been successful. So we just keep doing it. Like, and we've done at least one show a year since end of May of 2015. We haven't missed. So like I said, going on 11 years.
Beautiful.
We are not, occasionally I'll read something. Mike Crockett likes to do this when he fills in for Doc. He'll pull something from Dave's newsletter and we'll read something. But other than that, I try not to dig too much into the newsletters and stuff. We just kind of like to watch it.
Yeah.
So we don't look at ourselves as like historians as much as we look at ourselves as like classic wrestling reviewers. So we like to have fun. And when something sucks, we say it sucks. And when something's great, we'll put it over and we can't stop talking about it. Like, I've been accused of being a fanboy as well as a hater. So I guess it's a good thing to be like, but it's just trying to have fun. Like, it's two of my good friends, my best friends, and we talk about wrestling and we complain when we want to complain and we shake our hands. And, we're old. Like, Harper's the only one who's not 50 yet. Me and Doc are in our 50s. So like, we just, we're old men yelling at clouds, not like Cornette, but we yell at clouds. So as I say that, I love Corny. He's had me on his show and I've had him on mine. He's a good guy. He's always treated me well. So, but yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. We cover it a lot different. And no, Ray, I was not upset when I saw you were covering 89 at that point. I remember listening and I thought you and Steve did a great job in breaking things down. And yeah, there's never been any heat. I say this all the time on social media. If you ever see me like arguing with somebody on social media, I'm probably their friend, and that's just us having fun busting balls. I am not going to go back and forth with someone on social media. I that whole keyboard warrior thing, whoever does it, y'all have fun. That ain't for me.
Life is too short, man. I just can't do it, and I like
me,
to lead by example for my kids too. I don't want them to see, what is my dad doing? What the hell is that? Like, I don't want them to reference that when they do that and, tend to, what do you do? Well, you did it. We won't have that. So I'm with you, Mike. I don't take things too seriously, man. We have a great time too. And we appreciate you being on here, and hopefully we'll have you back, some more conversations down the road, man, as you continue your story of WCW 94, 95, and whatever else is to come here with the BTT and beyond.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun, man. We'll definitely do it again. I don't want it to be only one time. So man, I appreciate. Thank you for the invite again.
All right, guys. Mike Mills, Booking the Territory, the unprofessional classic pro wrestling podcast, along with Doc and Harper. It's great times. Go check it out right now. Binge listen if you haven't done so already. Thank you again, Mike. Appreciate you being here, man.
No problem.
All right. And Mike Mills, once again, everybody, from Booking the Territory. Want to thank all of his crew for allowing me to pull Mike away here this week. I want to thank all of the BTT Army that don't normally listen to the Grenade for giving us a shot here this week. Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. A little additional conversation with Mike Mills about the coming of Hulk Hogan into WCW, the changes that were put in place, and the good and the bad as well. Of course, there's always going to be good and bad of anything here in the world of pro wrestling. Hulkster brought some good financially, business-wise, certainly for the short term, but at the end of the day, well, it works out with the NWO as well. We know WCW will meet its demise eventually, though, but I don't think you can blame the Hulkster for much of that. Not very much of it anyway. But we're going to wrap things up here this week, and when we return, it's right back to the grind as we jump back into the 1989 WWF project, picking up where we left off. Going to start looking into May 1989 TV on the next episode. Some of the fallout from last we saw, Randy Savage and Sherry attacking, cutting the hair of Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Ronnie Garvin losing a retirement match to Greg the Hammer Valentine. So many feuds are beginning to come together. Of course, Rick Martel and Tito Santana. Ultimate Warrior still coming after that Intercontinental title. It was stolen from him at WrestleMania from Ravishing Rick Rude and Bobby the Brain Heenan. Tag Team Champions Demolition have some new teams in the hunt, including the Twin Towers and the Brainbusters. We've got all of that and so much more to look forward to. See what happens on May TV. Plus, pretty soon, we're going to see the return of Superfly Jimmy Snuka to our TV screens. Got so much to look forward to. But until then, time to say goodbye this week. Be back soon. More May 89 and the World Wrestling Federation looking at the TV. As this is Ray Russell saying from Pillar to Post and Coast to Coast, you pull the pin, I'll pick up the pieces right here on the Wrestling Memory Grenade. I'll see you next week. Don't miss it. Be there.
Hulk Hogan. We saw the cover of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and on the cover there was a shot of you and Ric Flair. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I don't like to put words in people's mouth, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I know the brother's on top of the world right now, dude. I know he's styling and profiling, limousines and Lear jets and all that stuff. And I know I have to live with that every day, but right now I've got another agenda going here, brother. I've got Thunder in Paradise. But I can tell you one thing, Heenan. If something happens, I get back in the ring, I'm going to go right to the top one more time. And when I do get back in the ring, brother, me and Gene is going to be the first man I let know what I'm doing. And what you going to do, Heenan, when Hulk Hurricane Hogan runs wild on you, brother?